The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, brought to you by DraftKings 2020 US Open DraftKings picks and preview. If you want to dig into all of the stats and use all of the customizable tools, I suggest you go to fantasynational.com. And if you use fantasynational.com/Mayo, you get yourself 20% off. It's major week. There are some gigantic prizes. I know NFL is taking over at the moment. This is a fucking golf major, people. Let's get excited for this. It's going to be a morning of golf, an afternoon of football. On Sunday, it's going to be glorious. And even on Thursday, we're going to have the morning with the US Open, the Thursday night game on the go. You're going to have golf in the morning on Saturday, college football on the go. If you're into like the NBA and NHL, good for you. But, I'm going to be concerned about the golf because there's a major going on right now. Smash the like button for the video and give me your favorite sleeper play in the $6,000 area on DraftKings. And don't be afraid to subscribe and rate the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast 5 stars. You can already check out my course breakdown show and statistical research that I did with Justin Ray from the 15th Club. That is up on the Mayo Media Network YouTube channel right now. Go check that out in the Listeners League link in the description of this video and podcast. 3 max entry, $15 to play, no rake. Best tournament on DraftKings. Suggest you reserve your spot now because, as we all know, the spots in the Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Open Golf Listeners League go very, very quickly. Enough of that. Let's get into it. Joining me, as they do for all of the majors, first up from Golf Digest, from CBS, from the Rick Run Good YouTube channel, on the line right now, Rick Gehman. What's up?
Pat, US Open. This is great. Hey, congrats on the new network, man. All good things, I hope.
Well, I saw that you had the Rick Run Good YouTube channel, and you were like, Pat, I make $5 million a year. I was like, I got to get on some of this YouTube money.
Yeah, at least $5 million a year. No problem.
And the third member of the team from Awesemo.com. He's already sweating college football. It's Ben Rasa. What's up?
Not much. Great time of the year. Busy time of the year. No doubt about it. But I couldn't be more excited for this. It's right in my backyard. I was supposed to go to this tournament. That's not happening, but I'm really, really pumped to break down Winged Foot.
Well, let's kick it off with the, most pressing news from the US Open. Brooks Koepka has withdrawn. Ben, this has to be glorious news for you because he can't win this year, which means you can win.
Oh, I tweeted out the other day, I am live for the first time in 3 or 4 years going into a US Open. I couldn't be more excited. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. Normally, I have that weekend off, but I might have to pay attention for 72 holes for a change.
Yeah, and you got to do that, and you're going to have these awesome DraftKings lineups, and then you're going to have all of your NFL lineups. Are you playing daily college fantasy? You can't play college football, can you, in New York?
So I have to drive across the border to Connecticut. It's great. I get Chick-fil-A. I put my lineups in there, get a little spicy chicken deluxe, and come back. So it's annoying, but it also has a good payoff that I get lunch every Thursday.
Winged Foot, for the first time since 2006, is going to be hosting the US Open. If you don't remember Winged Foot, it's where Phil put it in the tent and lost to Jeff Ogilvy. All of the scores well over par that week, too. Jeff Ogilvy became one of the very few people ever to win a golf tournament. Just not even a major, but a golf tournament shooting 4 rounds not better than par, because this is going to be an incredibly difficult course. So, Rick, when you think about Winged Foot, we've loaded it up on fantasynational.com right now of what we project the scorecard to be. Once we get the official scorecard, we'll put it in. But we have all the 2006 stats loaded into the system right now, and this is going to be a bloodbath, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be carnage. I mean, all the reports out of New York are talking about carnage, potentially an over par winning score, which can change, obviously. But I mean, you have to remember, and I don't want to geek out too much on this, but this is an architectural's dream. I mean, this course is phenomenal, but it was designed, 100 years ago. And some of the greens pitch from back to front 7 or 8 feet worth of difference. And that's when the Stimp was running at like a 9. I mean, it's going to run at like a 13 this week. If you are above the hole, you're absolutely dead. You're going to run it by 10, 11 feet, have to come back up the hill. It's going to be a bloodbath. We're going to have some super high scores, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I love this once a year.
Yeah, I mean, we just saw it like 2 weeks ago at the BMW Championship too, and this is going to be an even harder test. I was way off on how the difficulty of that tournament was going to play. I didn't realize that Mike Davis and the USGA were setting up at Olympia Fields. I mean, it's funny because the last time they had set up Olympia Fields, it wasn't Mike Davis, but it was the USGA. Played super easy, and they were like, "No more of that. Let's make it as hard as possible." And that's going to be the key this week. So for DraftKings strategy, Ben, knowing that like the winning score could be +5 or +2, that puts a huge emphasis on finishing position over what we would normally target in terms of DraftKings points, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So, normally a percentage of every player's points comes first off from bonuses, from streaks, and for under 70 bonuses. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that too much. Then the majority of your points come from raw points. Obviously, players are going to score raw points, but they're just going to be significantly less. So the total percentage, if you come in first, those placement points are going to be massive. And even working down, of course, it's just so important to actually finish high because you're not going to be able to outscore your placement. It could be a detriment having holes remaining late in this tournament.
Rick, when you got the pricing and just initial impressions on it, did it make you think like, hey, there is 156 players in this field, and this is going to be the most difficult field all year long, the most difficult tournament to get 6 of 6 players through the cut because it is top 60 in ties at the US Open. So we found that, top 65 in ties, that was brutal enough. That's leading to like 2.52% 6 of 6 percentage. Like there's a decent chance if like 1 or 2 of the popular plays misses that we're looking at sub 1 6 of 6%. So would that lead you to balance, or do you say it's hard enough to get 6 of 6? Let's go stars and scrubs.
Yeah, I actually think I've been kind of leaning towards stars and scrubs. Now we are days away from having to actually make these decisions, but I think stars and scrubs is interesting because there is actually a weird scenario, and this might be on the extreme side of it, but if things do get really wild on the weekend, Ben's right. Like holes in hand might be a detriment. Like you could have a really good 5 of 6, and your guy who missed the cut is not losing points on the weekend. Like that's going to happen if this turns into a bloodbath. Guys might lose strokes on a Saturday or a Sunday. It might be a bit extreme for that to actually happen, but I do think just because of the way how difficult we expect this to play, how few lineups are going to get 6 of 6 through, I would rather load up on some of the guys that have the larger percentage of the win equity because those placement points are going to be so critical, and then just, kind of throw darts down at the bottom. And if they happen to miss the cut, I'll convince myself it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I was kind of leaning the same way too, but then I started looking at like all of the guys that I really like for this tournament outside of like, the Dustin Johnsons and the John Rahms, like the clear favorites of the tournament. Like the next level of like player that I really like is kind of in that like low 9, low 8 territory. Then I'm like, if I can just make 6 guys through there, they have a higher cut percentage. Then I'm going to miss out on like Dustin Johnson, who's going to win by like 8 shots somehow. Him and Rahm are just going to run away with it. Because I do think that there's going to be sort of a want to jam in DJ and Rahm when it comes down to it. And the only way you can do that is by playing stars and scrubs.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what those guys have done over the past month, and Rahm specifically, who has not only won twice, but he's done it on like the 2 most difficult courses that we've definitely seen in the restart, and 2 of the more difficult courses that we've seen this year. And then you get DJ, who's literally the hottest guy on the planet and might just win this golf tournament by 5 or 6 shots. So there's definitely going to be a desire to want to jam those guys in. I completely agree with that. And I couldn't argue it, Pat, because they're the best players on the planet right now. And if you can afford to get one, or I don't know if you can get both of them in there without going super crazy, I couldn't blame you for it.
So this course is going to play over 7,450 yards, 7,477 yards to be exact. It's a par 70. Usual US Open setup. Obviously, Gary Woodland is the defending champion, but I'm not going to be looking at Pebble Beach. I'm not going to be looking at Erin Hills when I do my US Open research. I think that looking back 2 years, then looking back 4 years, whether it's going to be at Shinnecock or whether it's going to be the PGA Championship at Bethpage or Oakmont, I think, Ben, that those styles of courses are going to be more reminiscent of what we see this week.
Oh, there's no doubt. This has the feel, and listen, Rick mentioned this, things can change and we'll see, but at first glance, this has a feel of like the traditional US Open that everybody talks about, where the winning score can be over par. It's extremely punishing. The rough is ridiculous. Erin Hills and a couple of these lately have been a little different. So I'm going to treat it like a traditional US Open and plan accordingly, because that's really what I think we ultimately see here.
Are you going to really hammer down on a specific type of skill set? I know that's how you like to stack, Ben, is not necessarily, I mean, yes, you're going to do tee times, and we're going to wait for later in the week. If people don't know, I'm going to be doing a live chat noon Eastern time on Wednesday, where I'll update my betting card, finalize DraftKings picks, update the ownership, and really talk about the weather, and then take all of your questions. So set a reminder on Mayo Media Network to do that noon Eastern on Wednesday. And me and Feinberg will have the betting show out on Monday evening as well. After I get through all the football, then we'll get to the golf, and then it's back to football, then back to golf. Busy week for old Pat Mayo coming up here. But the skill set stack, like, is there any one skill that you're looking at? Because obviously long and straight is what you want, but there aren't that many guys who do that.
Yeah, if you can find 6 of those, just do that. But I will say that, when you do a skill set stack, it's, I think, much more important to look to off the tee than putting. Like, trying to pick 6 putters that you think are going to gain is almost impossible, but off the tee is so repeatable. If you want to say, I'm going to take 6 guys that are more than likely going to gain off the tee, you can do that. It doesn't mean it's going to work, but at least you're actually getting a skill set that you can group. So I may look for some distance heavy drivers, maybe some guys like the Fitzpatricks of the world that gain off the tee without being long sometimes. Things like that are at least repeatable.
Yeah, Rick, is there any sort of skill set? Because in the modeling that I've used, and I went through this on the First Look show when I punched everything to Fantasy National, that I did weight driving distance, but I actually weighted fairways a little bit more. And then I was able to kind of hammer down on, are these difficult to hit fairways? They do seem either average or difficult to hit. The rough is going to be super long. So you can set the different parameters, but I think that keeping it in the fairway and two putting for par is the strategy here. And you have to have guys that aren't going to try to overshoot their skis with this.
Yeah, no, I think you have to play winged foot out of the fairway. You can't play it out of the rough. You have to keep your ball below the hole. You have to be able to control your spin. You can't let it knuckle out of this thick rough and roll to the back of the green. That's when you start staring bogey in the face. So you look at guys who, on paper shouldn't really contend at places like this. Someone like a Brendan Todd, who doesn't hit it very far, but he hits a ton of fairways. I mean, look at what he's done at other difficult courses just in the restart. He's got top 25s at Muirfield Village, Olympia Fields, Harding Park. Those are places where putting it in the short grass is critically important. And yeah, he might hit 6-iron to a green that another guy might hit 8-iron into, but that's his style. He's used to doing that. And at least he's doing it out of the fairway. So I agree. Distance is always, a prerequisite for success. It's always handy to have. However, accuracy, being able to control your spin, especially at a US Open venue like we're going to get this week, that's going to bite back in a big way. I think I'm using that metric much more than I ever have.
Let's jump in to the pricing. I've already mentioned DJ. I've already mentioned Rahm. They are the 2 highest priced players on DraftKings this week, 11,500, 11,000. Then you got Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele, and Colin Morikawa. In my mind, I don't know if everyone's going to go to Dustin. I'm trying to wrestle with this myself because he's so expensive. And I think that Rahm is just as good of an option, but he too is also very expensive. And then people are going to look at US Open history and the fact that he played really well at the Tour Championship and almost ended up winning, but didn't hit his approaches at all and did it all with putting, like he's done at the US Open. Most strokes gained putting at the US Open over the last 3 years. Never finished worse than 6th at a US Open, Ben. You in or out on Xander? Because I think I might be.
I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible. Like this guy, yeah, you mentioned it. When I look at his statistics, I would be out. And then, dare I say it, does he have a formula that's repeatable by just gaining a ton of strokes at US Opens? I mean, he is going to gain off the tee. His driver is one of his stronger clubs. But to me, I will find the money, particularly for Justin Thomas, who I don't think is getting a ton of love out there. The putter's been a little cold. Game is in good shape, though. Tee to green, he's been fantastic. And I think he's every bit as worthy of being one of these top guys as Rahm and DJ this week.
Rick, if I look at strokes gained US Open over the past 5 years, it's going to spit me out DJ. Brooks would be number 1 on this list, but he's not playing. Yeah. So you have DJ, Louis, Xander, Reed, and Fleetwood. Those are your top 5 guys.
Yeah, I mean it's unbelievable that some guys can continue to find success at, I mean obviously it's not the same exact venue, but similar type venues, right? The rough is usually penal. They usually play on the longer side. I mean, we've seen Aaron Hill stretched out to like 1,000,000 yards when they played it there. But it's interesting. I agree with Ben's assessment of Xander, which is like, okay, he goes and rides a hot putter at the Tour Championship. That's probably not repeatable, but he's usually one of these guys that is so solid in every single category. You combine that with the history around difficult tracks like the US Open, and you got to love it. But yeah, I mean, Justin Thomas is interesting, right? He's going to go as far as his putter allows him, and I kind of loop him in with Rory McIlroy as well. Each of them have one thing that's kind of holding them back at the moment. For JT, it's the putter, which we saw at WGC, FedEx, St. Jude. You can win a golf tournament by losing strokes putting. It's rare, but it happens. And then Rory's thing is the irons. It's the wedges. It's the approach game that has not been sharp in the restart. I'm much more keen to think that JT gets a decent putting week than I am that Rory kind of flips the script and starts hitting his irons and his wedges to 2 feet or give himself enough looks at birdie or par in this situation. So I agree with Ben. I think JT is kind of, early in the first look of this, kind of the overlooked golfer out of the top.
It's just going to be that Xander is going to take away so much of the shine from JT. And even looking back, you mentioned that he lost strokes putting at the WGC in Memphis, still won the event. He actually lost 3.2 strokes putting at the Tour Championship. He came in second. So we're now going back to POA. And listen, Northeast POA, different than California POA, but it is the one surface where he tends to putt really well.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think to illustrate how important finishing position is going to be, and Justin Thomas is a guy who has so much win equity. He has so much top 5 equity. You go back to Olympia Fields. Jon Rahm won at Olympia Fields. He scored 94 DraftKings points. So think about that. 30 of them came from him winning the golf tournament, 64 from everything else. It might be a lot lower than that this week. So you are really needing those guys that have a lot of that top 5 equity so that you can just eat up all those finishing position points and fly you up the leaderboard.
So I guess that brings us to the big conundrum here, Ben. What to do with Rory?
I mean, obviously, listen, I can always make a case for Rory, but when I think of him, US Opens is not exactly when I think of his game. Now, yes, when he gets super dialed in driving the ball, I mean, he can take apart any course, but as Rick said, Rory hasn't been crisp with the irons for a while, and he's playing okay. He shows sides here and there, but it seems like it never connects. If you tee to green, he's killing it. The putter is cold. He makes some putts after some mistakes, but the game is a little erratic. Now, I can make a case for him, no problem. I like JT more, but Rory is kind of just there. I'll let ownership maybe dictate it for a change rather than just starting with Rory.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go full fade on Rory. I was big on him at Olympia Fields. I mean, I'm not going to be playing 150 lineups here. I'll probably be playing 20, maybe even just 10, depending on, I mean, it's a $100 Millionaire Maker, I believe. So I don't know how much money I really want to invest in the Millionaire Maker. I might try to find a lower stakes tournament, maybe a $20 and kind of load up on that. But at the same time, if I'm playing 20 lineups, I can't have all of the top end guys. And I really don't know what to do with Dustin or Rahm. Like, it feels like if I'm going to use one, I use both. Is that a weird way to play this?
Oh, so yeah, I mean, if you do that, oh man, that leaves you sub 7K right off the bat. It's tough because in a tournament like this, you really need them to actually finish up there. It's not going to be a situation where one of them can come, and outscoring your placement is going to be few and far between. So if you do that, if you think they can suck up 2 top 5s, obviously you get the go ahead, but it's a big ask. If I had to pick one, I would pick Rahm over DJ. I'm not super sold on DJ this week.
Do you have a lean between them, Rick?
I think that graphic that you have up right now kind of tells the story. I mean, Jon Rahm is 11-1 to win this golf tournament. Dustin Johnson 6.5-1. I know odds makers are not trying to predict the actual outcome. They're trying to limit their liability and spread the money around. But is Dustin Johnson twice as likely to win this golf tournament than Jon Rahm? I'd say no. Jon Rahm's only $500 cheaper. That to me is like the value play. DJ's burned me countless times in the past month. He's been phenomenal. But when you look at it, kind of what both of their upside is, which is absolutely winning this golf tournament, which one, the likelihood of them doing that and comparing it to their salary, like I think it's Rahm. I think it is.
So I think I'm with you guys. I think I would rather start with Justin Thomas. And if I look above $10,000, I mean, it worked for me at the PGA Championship. I won a bunch of money, Ben. Why not Morikawa? Doesn't he perfectly fit what you want to do here? Long irons and fairways?
Listen, he's shown time and time again that he can do. I mean, he's answered every question. I had questions about, can he do it in strong fields? Obviously. I had questions, can he do it in a situation like this? Well, he didn't win, but he was fine at the BMW. He showed flashes. It was his off the tee game that really hurt him there. And that's one of the biggest, an outlier. He hasn't lost off the tee basically ever besides that tournament. So I still think the price is a little steep on Morikawa. I'm not going to lie, but he has shown, I mean, especially tee to green, long irons, he's among the best in the world.
Yeah, just looking at it, Rick, and going through his stats right now, he is 6th in proximity from 175 to 200, 15th from 200 plus, 11th on holes from 400 to 500, 450 to 500 yards since the restart. Those are the 7 most difficult holes on the course, is that range. I think I just got to trust my guy, Morikawa. And even at the BMW Class or Championship, it was one opening round that really sunk him. He actually played really well after that.
That's right. Yeah, he played himself out of it a bit on Thursday. I agree. Ben put it perfectly. He's answered every question. Every time they ring the bell, Colin Morikawa shows up, whether it's winning an alternate field event and someone saying, oh, can he win on the PGA Tour? Yeah, he does that at Workday. Okay, can the game translate to a major championship? Sure, goes out, wins the PGA Championship. I mean, he answers the call every single time. He is the perfect, what we would call course fit, right? A guy who's going to hit it. He's not short. He's not the longest guy on tour, but he pokes it out there and he hits a ton of fairways. And then when you put an iron in his hand, he's like one of those iron Byron machines. He's just an absolute robot. And his dispersion it's almost like he's hitting a wedge when he's hitting a 6-iron. The guy's unbelievable. Now the putter, it rears its ugly head at times, right? Some of the short putts make you a little bit nervous, but it seems like he's figuring something out on the greens, and he's certainly not afraid of big stages, tough fields, tough conditions. No problem for Morikawa at an even $10,000. I mean, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, if you were to start your lineups, Ben, with Morikawa, or even potentially someone lower, it does give you access to one of those balanced lineups that I talked about. I don't think that a lot of people are just going to go that route. There's just too much temptation to take one of the top 3 guys and then take Xander, who I would assume is probably going to be the highest owned player in the entire US Open DraftKings field. So I like Morikawa, I like Thomas. And if we dip down in the 9Ks, there's Bryson staring us in the face. It seems like he's lost his game a little bit. I need him to get it into. I need him to win the Masters. So I don't care really what he does here. This might just be a fade situation for me. But historically, he's played this type of course really, really well. But since he's kind of changed his Happy Gilmore type game, it's not been good.
The thing about Bryson, and I've talked about this a little, and I actually feel more confident in saying it now, is he's so technical. It seems like when things get slightly off track, he has maybe a more difficult time getting them back because he just does things so advanced and he's so in depth. He's obviously got a problem with the irons and he's not able to just go back to basics and correct it right now. Then you look at the putter. I mean, I've never seen he gained 10, he gained 4.8, he lost 4, he gained 4, he lost 4. So it's all over the map. It's hit and miss. He's going to gain off the tee, but it's very hard to trust a guy where the rest of his game is a complete mystery every time he tees it up.
Yeah, are we just going full fade on Bryson here, Rick? Because it does seem like he's going to be very unpopular and no one's going to use him.
Yeah, I mean, here's the issue. You can't play winged foot out of the rough, and you can bomb it as far as you want. It's all about angles. It's all about being able to control your spin. You cannot do that out of the rough. The approach game has been weak. I love him. I love him at Augusta, right? You can go out there and you can take lines that nobody has ever seen at Augusta, and you're not penalized if you miss in a big way. You're going to pay if you miss in a big way at winged foot. And, if we rewind 4, 5, 6 weeks ago when the putter, when Bryson was rolling everything in, he was kind of covering up some of those mistakes that he was making, some of the proximity that was a bit further than we would hope from a guy who's driving it, 350 yards every single time. And now he's kind of lost that feel too. And I don't think winged foot makes it any better, right? There's going to be some really difficult, challenging reads, challenging putts all week long. I can't really get to Bryson outside of just calling it a dart throw and maybe he, hard reboots and figures everything out, but I don't have any evidence of that.
So the entire $9,000 area, it does kick off with Bryson. He's $9,900. It drops to Webb at 9.7, Cantlay at 9.4, How's Your Burger at 9,200, Tony Finau at 91, and Hideki Matsuyama, the king of really difficult courses, not winning them, but playing really well at them somehow, is $9,000. So from this range, I told you before we came on air that I think that everything's kind of setting up for Webb in this circumstance because the driver, again, has been so improved. And everyone can talk about, he changed his putter and he was able to putt his way to a Players' Championship. He has all these wins on Bermuda. The irons have always been good. And he's now gone back to this off the tee game where he's like average in distance, but he's hitting all of the fairways all of a sudden. Like basically in the past 8 months, he's really improved his driver, not distance wise, but if you need to be playing out of the fairway. And he's one of these guys, Ben, that his putter can go crazy. It's bent grass that usually gives him the problem. It's not POA. It's not Bermuda. So I'm not super concerned about like putting splits here with him. And I don't think that he's going to be super popular at a US Open where I think people are going to prioritize distance over anything else. But he smacks his long irons, sort of like Stenson and Morikawa do. He can make the putts to go along with it. He has the short game to save himself in a lot of these circumstances. And I don't think he's going to be a very popular play.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be popular. People, again, the U.S. Open, it brings a certain type of player. People think like, you got to be really strong off the tee. Webb makes his putts, but it is a Bermuda split. He's someone I may use in those teams that I alluded to, where maybe I take the pressure off driving distance and I look to some other things. I do think that there are going to be times where the way he plays is a disadvantage. If we get his good off the tee game where that's average, of course he can set himself up. But I do worry that he gets himself into situations that he can't work out of just because of how this course looks.
Yeah, Rick, a former US Open champion in Webb Simpson, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Won in 2011. He's finished in the top 20 each of the last 2 years. I think I made the comment before we went live, like when these guys walk off the tee box, Webb Simpson might be the best player in the world. Fairway through green, if that stat existed, right? We'll do the strokes gain approach through putting. He's unbelievable. And really all he has to do is hit fairways. And I say that like it's very easy on the PGA Tour or like it's going to be very easy at Winged Foot. But the difference this week between being in the fairway and being 1 foot over in the rough is going to be huge. And it's going to be like a half a shot penalty if you miss the fairway. And Webb Simpson doesn't miss a lot of fairways. So I like this. I mean, there's a couple of different profiles of golfers that can win on long, difficult golf courses. And one of them is just a guy that hits a bunch of fairways and is really good everywhere else. You don't have to bomb it if you hit it out of the short grass.
So that leaves the rest of the 9K area. If I'm crossing off Bryson, I'm using Webb. I can probably squeeze in one other guy. I think Finau is going to be popular. I think Berger is going to be popular. I think Berger profiles the best, Rick, of any of these guys because he, too, is someone who hits a ton of fairways. But at this particular style of course, difficult courses, Cantlay usually shows up.
He does, and he's been a little bit of a disappointment. We haven't seen him play a whole bunch because he had the surgery on what was the nasal surgery after Genesis. So we haven't seen him play all that much. I like Berger because he's so solid in every aspect. But I mean, Hideki, you mentioned him, Pat. I mean, he plays well not only at US Opens, but he plays well on difficult golf courses. He's won the Memorial. I mean, when you roster a guy like Hideki, you kind of just have to close your eyes for 4 days and don't watch the shot tracker because he's going to be stuffing everything to 5 feet and he's going to be missing a lot of them. It's like very difficult to watch and sweat. But when Sunday evening comes and he finds himself in the top 8, the top 5, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, Hideki did it again. I don't know how much actual win equity he has at a US Open, but he just continually puts himself on the first page of the leaderboard.
Yeah, just looking back at his US Open results, 21st, 16th, 2nd, miscut, 18th, 35th, 10th. So he just kind of shows up every single year. Or Ben, should I be using Hideki over like a Berger or a Cantlay or a Finau here? Because I think he'll be the least popular of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have Finau ahead of him, but Hideki's a guy, listen, if he can stay out of trouble, the problem with him, he's another one. When he doesn't have it, I don't know if he can hold it together and shoot. I know this sounds crazy, but like shoot 73 here and get out. Like he can't shoot 82. That's not going to get it done. And Hideki has times where it's just the driver is off, he's in the rough, He hits it out. He's got 75 yards for birdie, hits it to 20 feet, and he either makes a bogey or a double because he three putts. Like, that's not going to fly. Now, long term, if you want to zoom out, certainly when he was in form in 2017, he took apart Bridgestone. He was second in a US Open. Like, he has the pedigree to compete in a place like this, even at the BMW with his luck box around the green game. We saw it a couple weeks ago. I like him as a tournament play, but I trust Finau more, even though that sounds crazy in itself.
Looking back at the past 24 rounds overall that these players have played, this is really easy to do on fantasynational.com/Mayo to get yourself 20% off. Get a membership today. Get a weekly. Go test it out for yourself, or get an annual. Take you through next year too. It'd be great. But with the settings of rough length, long, and difficult scoring relative to par, he is 27th in strokes gained total, but 4th tee to green, which I find really interesting. We know that the putter is always going to hold him back, but he's not a disaster when you get him off Bermuda. If you're on Bent or if you're on POA, I mean, you're going to have some bad putting rounds, but they don't frequently happen as often where he just completely puts himself out of a tournament. So that is somewhat encouraging. If I just look at those parameters and look at tee to green over the past 24 rounds, it's DJ, Rahm, Woodland, Hideki, Scottie Scheffler, Paul Casey, Justin Thomas. I mean, three of those guys are pretty decent values. 4 of those guys are pretty decent values if you want to fade DJ and Rahm and go with the other one. So I think I might be leaning Hideki here, Rick.
You don't have to sell him to me. I'm kind of in on Hideki. I mean, we can get to Scottie Scheffler, but since you mentioned him, if Xander is maybe one of the most popular golfers on the slate, I think Scottie Scheffler probably also fits that category too. He's coming in at $8,200. He's got a couple of 4th place finishes coming in, and he finished second in the shadow leaderboard at the Tour Championship. If everybody started at 0, the one that Xander won, Scottie Scheffler finishes second. So he's been on an unbelievable run. We've seen him do it at difficult golf course. I think he's another very popular option this week.
I really like Scottie Scheffler. I'm going to bet him to win at I got him at 60-1 already. I'm curious to see where the odds readjust to come Monday, but he's in this $8,000 range that you talked about. So the entire range itself is Fleetwood, Day, Scott, Tiger, Reed, Rose, Fowler, Scheffler, Hatton, Hovland, and Matthew Fitzpatrick. I have a lot of guys I really like in this area, and they all kind of tend to be towards the bottom end, Ben. Like, I like Scheffler a lot. I really like Hatton. I like Fitzpatrick for the first time ever. Like, this entire range kind of does it for me. Like, you can sell me on Adam Scott if you wanted to. We all know the US Open acumen of Tommy Fleetwood, although he's been absolute trash. Justin Rose is someone who I don't even know what his deal is right now. It looked like he went back to England. And does that mean that he's like, do you have to quarantine when you go to the States, or is that like a rest of the world thing?
I don't know if we have rules anymore. Yeah, I don't know. He's been off. There's a couple guys, like all these guys that had terrible seasons. Like, what has Ricky been doing? What is Rose? They didn't make it to their normal. It certainly weren't at Eastlake. But you mentioned a lot of guys. I'll go with my favorite. It's Patrick Reed, no doubt about it. He's built for this. He's actually low key been better than I thought off the tee. He's gained in 7 straight. The rest of the game is erratic, but that comes with Reed. He grinds. He makes, the most out of nothing. And he's someone that I love knowing, he can grind out a 71, a 72. He is fantastic at holding rounds together when he doesn't have it and making putts when you need to, which we know you're going to have to make a lot of 8-10 footers for par here.
Yeah, in this range, Rick, do you look more for like the prototype of the player rather than recent form? Because when we think like grinder type course, it's going to be difficult. I think Reed, I think Hatton, even Paul Casey is someone who kind of pops up for me, just because if putting's going to be difficult, well, it's no big deal for Paul Casey. He sucks everywhere putting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think you kind of have to look at these guys a little bit individually. I love Hatton, right? I mean, you go back 4 months, he was like on pace for one of the best seasons ever. He had all of his regression, which we knew was coming. All of his regression was in like 2 weeks, and now he's like right back on track. He won at API earlier this year, which is one of the most difficult golf courses that we see. But you mentioned Matthew Fitzpatrick, and I too do not like Matthew Fitzpatrick. He is like the opposite profile of a guy that I normally play, where he does it all kind of with the flat stick. But you look at just how he gets it done at difficult golf courses, and you're talking about 3rd at Muirfield Village, which was a bloodbath. You're talking about a 6th at the BMW Championship. That was Olympia Fields. That was an absolute bloodbath. I mean, he just seems to find a way to get it done. So you could convince me that that's a pretty good price on a guy I normally don't play in Matthew Fitzpatrick this week.
Does it seem like this top end of the 8K range is going to be an absolute dead zone? Because I much prefer the lower 8s and the higher 7s to, like, I like Adam Scott, I like Ricky Fowler, I like Tiger Woods, I like Jason Day and all that, but I'd rather save the $1,000 and use guys I think are better right now.
Yeah. Do we have to talk about Tiger? I don't really like Tiger here. There's no, outside of the fact that I'll be super stoked on Sunday evening if he raises the trophy. I'll be out in the street, but like, there's no evidence that the way that he has played in this calendar year would translate at all to a US Open, right?
So, Ben, you kind of mentioned it when we were talking about putting before we came on air that, you know, maybe Sergio had been running hot when he was only losing 2 strokes per round on the greens. Like, Tiger has been abysmal with the flat stick.
Awful. Yeah, his irons are tuned in. It's just, I mean, he can't find it. And it's been unlike what you can live with. Like when you look at Bryson, Tiger is not losing, a ton of strokes on the greens. He had one horrible one early in the year, but it's just like steadily losing a couple strokes every week. And that's to me even worse because I don't know how you get out of that. If you have a meltdown at a certain course and you get right back at it, okay, you throw that out. But there's nothing that I see that Tiger's suddenly going to turn it around. Of course he can, but he's really struggling with the putter. And without that, I don't think he can compete at all.
If you had a favorite of these upper guys that wasn't Patrick Reed, I think for me, it would be Adam Scott. Although, I'm very tempted to use Tommy Fleetwood, although he has been god-awful since the restart.
I don't understand him and Day just randomly lost like 30 strokes with the approach combined lately. I don't know what that is. I'm kind of being serious. It's hard to tell. Normally I would say Fleetwood, but I would have to say Scott by default just because his game is a little more well-rounded. And I can't even imagine what you get with the approach when we look at Fleetwood and Day right now.
If you go to Tommy Fleetwood's player profile, Rick, you will see minus 6.6 strokes lost at the Northern Trust, minus 6.3 at the Wyndham. He made the cut that week too somehow. He's been putting the lights out and saving himself. Is there a chance that he gets us back together? And do you think people even care about this? And they'll be like, oh, US Open, Tommy Fleetwood, I'm in.
I actually don't know. I think that the way that the salaries are, I feel like in previous years, Tommy Fleetwood was like not an obvious like plug and play, but he fell in a much more natural salary tier when you were building lineups. I think this is not as natural, right? You can spend up and get Xander, you can get Colin Morikawa, then you jump down to the low 8s and you build around, the Hatton and Fitzpatrick and Scottie Scheffler. And that top of the range is kind of a dead zone. So I don't know how many people are just like, oh, US Open, let's fire up Tommy, because he hasn't been on the top of leaderboards recently. We haven't seen him play a whole lot of golf since the restart. I don't know. I don't think he's going to be as popular as we've seen in, US Opens or majors in the past.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what goes on. I'm probably just not going to use anyone from these upper 8s, to tell you the truth. I might use Reed because Ben may have talked me into him. But again, I'm going to hammer that low end. Like, I think that there is a viable strategy this week that if you wanted to fade everyone and you wanted to build this team, you could go Scheffler, Hatton, Fitzpatrick, Casey, Answer, Woodland. You could build that team. That team's not bad.
Well, now that you said it, you're going to split the Millie 250 ways, I think.
Yeah, we'll see if anyone has the guts not to use anyone above $8,200 in their lineup. I'm going to have my doubts about that. We'll see if I end up doing it, but I just really love this range a lot, which means it's going to be absolutely terrible. And I know everyone else is going to love this range as well, but like last guy at the even 8,000, we all kind of like Fitzpatrick, we all like Hatton. Scheffler we know is going to be incredibly popular, but Ben, Big Dick Vic, what do you think?
Oh boy, one of the crazier. I mean, he is just the perfect poster boy of why golf is so wild. The guy was a clinic tee to green, literally 3 of the most dominant tee to green weeks we've seen. And then randomly it all stopped. And the minute it stopped, his putter out of nowhere heated up. He has been average at best. I'd say slightly below average tee to green for the past month or so. He's shown he can do it. I mean, I remember when he got crazy hot. I believe that was a US Open, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was at Pebble last year when he got it going.
Yeah. But maybe, you know what? In a tournament like the Millie, I actually don't hate it because he fits. He creates leverage on aggressive bomber stacks that I think most people aren't going to look to him So I'm kind of more interested as I talk this through, even though clearly I think the pertinent play are the guys around him with a little more, polish and playing a little better right now.
Well, the one thing, Rick, that he does bomber-wise that no other bomber besides like Scheffler actually does is he hits a bunch of fairways.
Oh yeah, he's the rare combination of distance and accuracy, right? That we get on the PGA Tour, and I think this is his first U.S. Open as a professional. I believe last year he was an amateur. He was the low am at Pebble Beach. Yeah, so this is the first time he's going to play it as a professional. I think the good news is from the short career that we have seen from Viktor Hovland, he profiles as one of these great fantasy guys, right? Just absolutely kill it from tee to green. He hasn't been as good recently, but even when he hasn't been as good, like he hasn't really killed you anywhere, right? I mean, he had a top 20 at the Northern Trust. He finished, 33rd at the PGA Championship. These are big fields, deep fields, challenging golf course. Like, I don't know. I'm probably more warm on Viktor Hovland just because of the way that he profiles over the long term. And I can kind of write off a lot of that short-term stuff and say, okay, he can get it going in a week like this where it's going to be so critical to use that skill set, which is rare, distance and accuracy.
Then one name from this range that we didn't mention, I suppose we should say his name briefly. Ricky Fowler?
I don't know. I mean, he's been going through this like swing. I don't want to call it a swing change, but like the alterations of his swing since February, since January, and his big. I don't want to call it a miss, but he's afraid to go left, or at least he was afraid to miss left, which is a really difficult thing on any PGA Tour golf course, let alone a major championship. Now, I think the optimism is he's been trending in the right direction. I think he's getting closer and closer. So the last couple of weeks that he hasn't played, maybe he's been able to dial it in. Maybe he's at that 100% point. I'm not ready. I need to see it first for Ricky Fowler. I think he's trending in that direction. I just don't think I'm ready to deploy him at a major championship for a guy who's going through known swing changes without seeing them first.
Yeah, Ben, I mean, there's probably no better leverage play. Like Tiger and Ricky, I assume, are the two guys no one's going to use in the eighth.
What a world. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
crazy.
I vowed to throw out all my orange clothes after St. Jude, and I still have a little, obviously, with this year. It's always something with him. I mean, there's just been so many tournaments where he's out of it after Thursday, then he shoots a fantastic round on Friday. There's so many tournaments where he's in the hunt, and then Sunday comes and he loses a ball, or it's something ridiculous. He needs to get back to being one of the best putters in the world. I think that would take the pressure off what is never going to be a dominant tee to green game. I'm going to have some Ricky. I always do, but I am not nearly as hot. If this was a slightly different situation, I'd be saying he's my favorite play in this entire field at 8,300, and that's just not the case at this point.
Let's drop into the sevens, and I think the first 5 names are super interesting, and then it kind of goes dead. Harris English hasn't missed a cut at the US Open in his 4 appearances since 2012. He doesn't necessarily play in them every year, but this is the best year that he's been having. I think that although he's been a popular DraftKings play for a while, that just seeing his name amongst all of these other names, like the defending US Open champion, who's $100 cheaper, is just going to push a lot of people away from him. I haven't really decided on him yet, but I think that Casey is sort of the distance accuracy profile. He's actually the best at that of anyone in this field, except for a guy who's just slightly cheaper, and that's Matthew Wolff. And Answer is someone who hits a bunch of fairways. Like, I'm having a tough time picking between Casey, Woodland, Answer, and Wolff. I probably can only end up with 1 or 2 of those guys. And Rick, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think I have a little bit of a blind spot, and maybe the models have a little bit of a blind spot for Matthew Wolff, because I really believe that his game in the last 3 or 4 months has matured a lot faster than it did for the first 12 months of his, very young career, and in a good way. I mean, he's been really good. He's been dialing it in. Remember, he won 3M last year and didn't have another top 10 for a year. Like that's not going to happen again. Like he's going to start piling up top 10, top 15 finishes. He has the weapon, the ability to bite off a huge chunk of winged foot that goes a long way. Now, can he keep it in the fairway? Can he make enough birdies? Sometimes the wedges get a little wonky here and there, but I'm really bullish on what Matthew Wolff has done in the last 90 or the last 120 days. It seems like a completely different guy than we were talking about last year. So it's hard when you look at a full range of his results. You have to kind of take little bite-sized pieces off of the most recent part of it, Pat. I'm very bullish and very warm on Matthew Wolff moving forward.
It's the combination. If we're gonna like Scheffler, we're gonna like Hovland because of these traits. The distance plus accuracy, Ben. Like no one hits it. He's third in this field in driving distance, and since the restart, and 32nd in driving accuracy. Like that is a lethal combo at a U.S. Open.
There's no doubt, and I echo everything that Rick just said. I was like fairly certain that Matthew Wolff was going to be a guy for the immediate future where he just like takes apart easy courses. He takes apart the same courses. Like he's going to have some repeat wins, and he's just not competitive at places like Memorial, at Olympia Fields, at US Opens, because he just can't handle it around the green and with the putter. He has made significant strides. He was 22nd at Memorial. He was 16th at the BMW. He leaned on his off the tee game. Nothing else was stellar, but he didn't lose, an insane amount of strokes elsewhere. So normally I would say this would be easy. It would be Paul Casey of the three for me. Matthew Wolff has really shown that he's more well-rounded than I give him credit for, and he can handle what is going to be an insane test for these guys.
So after Wolff, then, amongst the other three guys, Woodland, Answer, and I'll even throw Casey and Harris English into that too. Who would be the next one up for you, do you think?
Oh, it'd be Casey. He's pedigree, no problem, well-rounded. I mean, Harris English is not even, I'm not considering him in the field. So that there's only 4 for me. That's never going to happen. Woodland and Answer, I'm kind of indifferent to. I think Answer's a fine driver and a solid player. As you talked about, Pat, you can't play everybody. So Casey for me, and then Wolff is creeping up, honestly, to be a lot more owned in my lineups than I originally thought.
Rick, what do you make of this range? We can even go below this too and throw in Lowry and Louis. I just kept off Louis for Ben because I know he would just say Louis. So I'll ask you, who probably has a bit more objectivity on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make the case for Harris English, right? I mean, if you look at the restart, so June, 8th, we came back on the PGA Tour. He ranks 8th in strokes gained total in that stretch, and he's like the only guy under $8,000 in this field that is in like the top 25 since the restart. I mean, when you just look at getting the ball in the cup, right? Strokes gained total, how you're comparing against the rest of the field. Now, he does it in a way, he's not as short as someone like a Brendan Todd. I mean, there's few are, but he's not great with the driver, but he has a great short game, right? He can get you up and down in kind of some of these awkward situations that a US Open presents itself. And he's not sexy. He's $7,900. I don't know what his upside is. He kind of won the B flight with DJ at the Northern Trust. He came in second, 11 shots off the lead. So that might have been his ceiling. We might have just seen it a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, but I think we got to put a little respect on Harris English's name. He's been really good for 3 months.
I guess my issue with English is that he's not a great driver of the ball. And when you even think about someone like Brendan Todd or Webb Simpson, at least they're almost certainly going to hit a bunch of fairways, even if they don't have much distance. Harris English can be like straight up bad off the tee. It's not like he's an accuracy maven who doesn't hit it all that far. He can hit it pretty far, and sometimes he hits some fairways, but other times he is just pure shanking it. And that would be my biggest fear with him versus some of these other guys in this range is the consistency with the driver, Rick.
He's very average off the tee. 65th in driving distance, 77th in driving accuracy. He's essentially the average tour pro when it comes to that. But he's much better in other situations. So I agree. If he has a bad week and he starts missing fairways, I was going to say it's going to be a long week. It'll probably be a short week for him. He won't make the cut, but I like the rest of his game, and he's proven it over the last 3 months that I think we should be a bit more bullish on him.
So rest of the sevens, Ben, once you get below that like mini tier that I really like, where are you looking? Because I did see Henrik Stenson is $7,200, and I was just like, Henrik Stenson, huh? He seems like he's good at US Opens. His game is nowhere to be found right now, but like Sergio's in this range. Maybe he can make a putt. Who knows? Lowry's in this range. Maybe he won't miss a cut. Like there's a lot of name value that's a bit cheap here, but I don't know if I'm buying into it.
Nothing that really like jumps off the page. You've got a lot of big time players with, as you mentioned, games that are not translating. I mean, Stenson has been he hasn't played much, but it hasn't been good. Sergio, I mean, he got the short week, so he won't be rushed, but that's not really great. He hasn't he hasn't gained strokes putting since the restart, and there's no reason to think that he will next week. Having said that, he's, to me, when you look at what you need to do off the tee, I feel pretty comfortable with him there. And then you've got like the Bubbas, the Niemans of the world who are interesting, and Niemann made strides, certainly played fantastic at a brutal track the other week, but this is not a great range for me. I really don't have much to say.
There is one guy that I find really interesting, and I find that his value is kind of hidden in the stats that we just normally look at. If we look at strokes gained off the tee, it's not very good. But Rick, if you look at Sung Jae, for example, you'll see that he's one of the few players that is an above average distance player and a well above average accuracy player, and he found something at the Tour Championship with his irons. It was the first time in a really long time that happened. Is it just a blip? Is it an aberration? Or is he back to being Sung Jae? Because no one's going to want to use Sung Jae, but I think he profiles really well for US Opens.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at just further than the restart, Sung Jae's phenomenal, right? I mean, there's a reason he was Korn Ferry Tour Player of the Year. There was a reason he was Rookie of the Year. There's a reason he's trending towards just being at East Lake every single year. And he told us that he found something with his irons at the Tour Championship. The ball he was hitting was a bit heavier. It was much more of a piercing ball flight, which is what he was going for. And I think if you look at his ability to compete on difficult golf courses, well, he wins at the Honda Classic, PGA National. That's one of the most difficult courses that we see on a yearly basis. He follows that up with a top 5 at Bay Hill. Again, a very difficult golf course. Those two finishes for me go a super long way, and you are getting a pretty good price for a guy who has, I mean, I don't know what his upside is at a major championship, but we've seen him contend in some of the biggest fields. We saw him play extremely well at the President's Cup. I don't think there's a stage that is necessarily too big for Sung Jae, especially as he continues to mature. So yeah, I'm loving it, Pat. I could absolutely back Sung Jae this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in on Sung Jae at $7,500 and leave against the instincts that I want to have, Ben. I want to use Sergio. I really do. I kind of want to use Jordan Spieth, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to prevent myself from doing it. Even Billy Horschel, who seems like a perfect US Open style player, just fairways, greens and regulation, 2-putt for par, go about your way. But I like that Sung Jae can get himself out of a jam if things do go awry, because there was always the thing, like even when he was playing poorly, like he would still like basically find ways to make the cut most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, Sung Jae, he's had some, post restart. He certainly had a stretch there where he kind of lost it. But to me, the thing I'll say about him, I actually like him more for a bet, just because the stats are all over the place. I think the upside is not the problem. I'm just worried about, he's the guy I could look at his stats, and if I had to bet, where would you feel most confident he gains in terms of off the tee approach, around the green, or putting? There's not one spot where I'm like, all right, he's certain to gain here and we got to worry about this. You got to worry about everything. But on the flip side, he's shown the ability to gain in all 4 recently. So no glaring weakness, no glaring strength. To me, that's more boom or bust. And when you're like that, it's always appealing.
If you believe in statistical models, it will tell you that Bubba Watson has a very good chance this week and is completely undervalued. I will be taking a pure fade on Bubba Watson at US Opens, as he is a disaster at US Opens historically. So just pass on him. And I guess that brings us to the name that I don't know if people are going to go with or not. But Rick, what do we do with Brendan Todd? Do we just use him?
I love Brendan Todd. First of all, if we could figure out a model that took the mental side into it, I think Bubba would not rank as highly as he does on the physical side. I love Brendan Todd in this situation, right? He is a slightly, I guess maybe more than slightly worse version of Webb Simpson, right? He's one of the shorter hitters on the PGA Tour, but he finds a lot of fairways. And look at the results. You're talking about 3 of the most difficult golf courses that we've seen at Olympia Fields. He finishes 8th there. TPC Harding Park, you got to hit the fairway there. T17, Muirfield Village, T22. So 3 top 25 finishes at places that in theory on paper should not be good fits for Brendan Todd because of the way he plays. But it's just like he does it differently. He hits so many fairways at an incredible rate, and then he knows he can hit his long irons. He can get it up and down. Like I'm very much in on Brendan Todd, who has proved more in the last season than we could have ever imagined about his game. I don't know how we can overlook it for the value at this number.
Well, how about the discount Brendan Todds at this point of their careers, Ben? You have Zach Johnson, who continuously make cuts at U.S. Opens somehow, and Matt Kuchar, who for the first time at a major, I think since DraftKings started having millionaire makers, might not be like a free square for people.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of those guys. I would throw in, for me, even Ian Poulter, he's certainly not playing great, but another guy who can do a lot with the putter, not going to grade out well when you're looking tee to green. It's tough. Listen, Brendan Todd, the results are the results. The way he's doing it makes it almost impossible for me to think that he can continue to do it, but there are guys, and he's certainly one of them, their blueprint is just different. And it's more sustainable than it would seem. It's still a lot of pressure to me, like Brendan Todd has to gain a sizable amount of strokes putting, or he has absolutely no chance. There are other guys that don't need to do that when we're talking about just like even competing. That's tough, but he's more likely to do that than most. So I get it. I'm just not looking to jam those guys in a ton. I'd rather roll the dice with the aggressive hitters.
See, I think towards the lower end of this pricing, I'm going to play a more floor route because it is a US Open. And I'm going to lean more on fairways than actual driving distance. So like fairways and short game could be a decent strategy just to grind out pars if I'm not looking for birdie streaks or guys trying to drive par fives and two, because that's just not going to happen. It might happen at one of the par fives. The other par five, that's completely out of the question. So, Rick, there is this little tier of Kuchar, Stenson, Zach Johnson, and all of a sudden, Martin Keimer's playing pretty well in Europe.
Yeah, every time I refresh Twitter, I feel like I see Martin Keimer's name in contention on the Euro Tour. It is interesting. I mean, none of these guys move the needle that much for me. I do agree that the strategy is get guys that might not kill you down here, right? Which I don't think Zach Johnson necessarily kills you. He finds a way to hit a lot of fairways. He finds a way to contend or at least make it to the weekend of US Opens. He's probably the guy that I give the biggest nod to. I mean, then you start looking at Cooch, and I mean, even Siwoo's here. He's not your floor guy. He's not your high floor guy. And then Leishman, who broke Torrey Pines by doing it the wrong way, regression has found Mark Leishman. He's been one of the worst players on the planet in the last handful of weeks. He's a guy I couldn't touch. So I don't love this area, Pat. I don't think I'll be getting a lot of investment in the bottom of the sevens.
So the final guys in the sevens, Ben, like Noren, noted hard course player, but has been sort of like Leishman. How Leishman won Torrey Pines, it was like, that's not how you win golf tournaments. Then you just look at Alex Noren's stats, you're like, he shouldn't be playing well at all, but he continues to like chip in and make all of his putts. It's been really weird how he's piecing everything together. Cameron Smith has been playing a little bit better as late. Danny Willett is another one you would expect to play well at hard courses, but he's been just in the trash lately. Like, I don't know what to make of this bottom end. Like, Matt Wallace might actually be the guy. I know he's kind of he's a more aggressive player, but his short game bails him out. And if I flick back over to who has played well on difficult courses with really, really long rough, you're going to see Matt Wallace's name pop up near the top of that. He's 17th in strokes gained tee to green and 6th in strokes gained total. I kind of like Matt Wallace.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, this is a range full of guys that the stats are all over the place. And I don't know how safe anybody is even down here. Like, I get the logic of like, these guys, hit some fairways. They're going to make some putts. They're not going to blow up, but you could end up scoring practically nothing with some of these guys if it plays that hard. And for me, I know they're not in the 7. They're at 60. Like, the EVRs of the world, I think, are not that much more risky, but they present a little more upside just because of the firepower they possess off the tee against some of the guys we just talked about.
It's more, like I said, it's more of a floor play that I'm really emphasizing more than any other week. I mean, you should always be trying to get all your guys through the cut, but these guys seem like they could be like T49 this week. And I don't know if that's going to end up positive or negative. Like Rick had said, like, are guys going to outscore other players that make the cut who end up missing the cut? I don't know. If they end up with like an eagle somehow, they probably will. But if we drop down into the 6s, if we talked about that stars and scrubs lineup build, this is where you're going to have to go. And the two guys really that kind of pop off immediately, Rick, are the two guys at 6,900. And I don't feel good about either of them, but it's Shez and Corey Connors. Like, they're hitting the fairway.
Yeah, I think so. I understand why Ches might be one of the more popular options, right? He's got a pretty good run of success at US Opens. He pops up at a recent WGC event. I'm not as optimistic. I think I like him. I don't love him. I mean, you have to remember that finish at the US Open last year, the third place finish. That was Pebble Beach. I mean, Pebble Beach, one of the shorter US Opens we're going to ever get. Now, on the flip side, he did play well at Erin Hills. He finished 16th there 3 years ago. That's one of the longer courses we're ever going to get at a US Open. So he kind of shows he can do it a couple of different ways. You're just going to rely on him to pound fairways, hit his hybrids or whatever to the front of the green, pitch up and roll it in for par. I mean, that's going to be the strategy for Reavie and a lot of these other guys down here. So I think he's the one that I think will get a lot of looks at $6,900. I think they're warranted, but I just don't think they're necessarily as great as we might want to think they are.
DraftKings strategy for this, Ben. If anyone is super chalky in the 6K area, you're just good fading them?
Yes. There's, to me, no. Now, I don't know how much ownership will amass, but if for some reason it does, yes, I would absolutely blindly fade them no matter who it is.
So guys that I like going down here, like I'm still torn on Connors, just if he's not hitting a green in regulation, it's an auto bogey. But the good thing for him here at this course is just looking through how the scoring distribution works is that not many holes you make like triples. It's just like death by a million bogeys. Very rarely like you're going to see like a lot of doubles or a lot of triples. It'll just be like 5 bogeys in a row. And if he misses greens regulation, he's almost certain to make that bogey, but so is everyone else at this point. So you might as well take the guy who doesn't have that complete downside. I would say that Ben Ann is kind of in that same range too, but I like Kevin Streelman at this course. He's another one of those shorter guys that's going to hit a lot of green or a lot of fairways, hit a lot of greens in regulation. He's not a great putter, but he doesn't 3-putt a lot either. That if the score is going to be around even, Rick, he's kind of the grinder type guy that I like here.
Yeah, he's definitely a grinder. He's, a seasoned vet. He can compete. He popped up the Travelers earlier in the restart. I like the way that he profiles out. No problem there for Kevin Streelman. What about Jason Kokrak? I mean, Kokrak is 6,800. Let's talk about it. 6,800. 3 straight top 15s from Wyndham to the BMW Championship. 7th on tour in driving distance last season, so he can hit it out there a long way. Now he misses a lot of fairways, but it's a give and take when you're down here at $6,800. What's wrong with Jason Kokrak?
Since the restart, he is 3rd in proximity from 175 to 200 yards. He is 7th from beyond 200 yards. The stats point to Jason Kokrak, Ben. I'm seeing it. He's ranked 7th in my model for this week, and I can't. I don't know if I can do it.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, Jason Kokrak's the kind of guy I'm thinking like, yeah, I may win with them, but like, can I face myself in the morning knowing that it's something supersede money, and that might be one of them. But he is, Tee to Green, he's been fantastic. Again, another guy, like if you would have told me Olympia Fields played that hard, I would have said he's completely dead. He was great. I worry about, his around the green game is weak. We know that it could be problematic. Gonna have to do it with the driver. He's a strong driver of the ball. Obviously, I would just rather play Thomas Pieters because that's what I would rather do. He's a wild man too. So Kokrak's got the stats. Knowing his profile, having seen a lot of data on him, he could run into a lot of trouble if he's not crisp with the irons.
So there's a few guys here that don't have stats because they're either from the Korn Ferry Tour or they've come over from the European Tour. But like Pieters is 68. Hogard, your guy, Ben, he's also 68. And Sam Horsfield, who's been the best player since the restart on the European Tour, he's 68. And if you drop down a little bit, Paul Waring, 67, just cross off Paul Waring. But then Will Zalatoris is also right at that number too. And I love Will Z, man. Will Z's great.
Will Z, man. Yeah, he's someone, every time you go on Twitter, when you see the doubles, it's always with Will Z. A lot of people rooting him on each and every week. This is tough. I think it's a fine line.
I was going to say, Big Z is like discount Scottie Scheffler this week, isn't he?
I see how you do. Do you think he can, similar to Hogard, like this is a massive step up. Like I just don't know if those guys can handle something like this.
Rick, what do you make of those guys? Like, can Zalatoris jump from Korn Ferry? And like, he possesses the right skill set for here.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly. Listen, I think Will Z is like the odds-on favorite to be like next year's PGA Tour Rookie of the Year when you look at it that way. And kind of some of the progressions that we've seen some of these guys make. Scottie Scheffler jumps onto the scene, he starts making noise right away. Sung Jae Im jumps onto the scene, starts making noise right away. I think the gap between the PGA Tour and the Korn Ferry Tour is as small as it's ever been. The margin is as razor thin as it's ever been. So I give these guys a lot of credit. They play difficult golf courses a lot. Their peers are very similarly skilled as some of the bottom end guys on the PGA Tour. And that goes for like Brandon Wu too. I mean, Brandon Wu, very young, just out of college. He hasn't played a whole bunch on the Korn Ferry Tour. He won a few weeks ago. He's got a bunch of top 10s over there in the restart. I think these are guys that they look at some of their peers in college. They look at some of their peers on the Korn Ferry Tour and they say, like, they're not that much better than I am, or I was better than those guys. I just think that we have to respect some of the really top end guys on the Korn Ferry. They might be better than some of the low end guys on the PGA Tour who just kind of kept their card, whether it's because of COVID or once you get on the PGA Tour, it's kind of hard to lose your card.
So you said Peters, Ben, the madman. I guess he's now discount John Rahm at this price. But if you set the over under on clubs broke, it'd probably be over 2.5 when it comes down to Thomas Peters. But like, who are the Euros that you do? Is it like Detry? Is he on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, Detry's a guy, another one. It's kind of the similar conversation that we're having where, like, he's a player. He has no experience over here. I mean, he played it in Punta Cana once. It's tough. Even though I think these guys talent-wise can compete, I just don't know how that's going to translate. Thomas Peters, I know, he's come in top-end showings at majors before. Sam Horsfield, I think if I had to look, I will say another guy, and again, these are very deep flyers. Ryan Fox is as aggressive off the tee.
No. I did this 2 years ago with Ryan Fox. No. Don't do it.
Don't do it? Okay, yeah. I mean, he is a mega bomber, and that could be, maybe he can't handle a course like this. So I think you want to be careful with guys taking massive steps up. This is not a normal situation, and I'm treading pretty lightly.
So there's going to be I think there's going to be a want to be somewhat sneaky here, Rick, and take some of these Euro guys because maybe they're higher up in the world rankings or they have great finishes recently. And we've seen some Euros play really well at US Opens. Look at Martin Keimer. He wasn't like basically a full-time PGA player, but he plays primarily on the European Tour. He has 2 majors to his credit, and he did it at Pinehurst, but a lot of it was just, let's hit some fairways, let's make some putts, let's go on our way. And you can find that with some of the Euros, but do you think that they'll end up being more popular than like your average PGA player who kind of profiles well for this course by hitting a lot of fairways, be it Tyler Duncan or Lucas Glover or Michael Thompson or Damon Merritt, that type of guy?
Yeah, and I think we've seen that over the years is the Euro guys are the guys with not a lot of film, a lot of footage. They're the shiny new object, right? You only need kind of one little thing to convince yourself. Like if Ben just told me in a vacuum, Ryan Fox is very aggressive off the tee, I'd be like, oh, Ryan Fox, he's very cheap. I'm very interested in this. That's all I know about the guy. And that's what a lot of people are going to hear, and they're going to latch on to one thing. Some of these guys that we see on the PGA Tour week in and week out, unfortunately for them, we have more history on them. And it's like, oh, wow, he misses a lot of cuts. He does this, he does that. It's kind of like in football, the backup quarterbacks are better off not putting more plays on film if they want a contract. Just be the unknown, be the guy that you might be good. I think it's a shiny thing. And I think it doesn't eat up a lot of ownership, but I think it's certainly more than they should, Pat.
Well, Detry has 2 second place finishes in his past 4 starts, but I guess the guy to really look at here, I think, is the Finnish flash pen, Sami Välimäki. T10, second, T6 at 3 really hard courses at the back end of this European swing.
Okay, that is like, and I pay attention over that. I thought they were going to say like Connor Simi or some of these. Sami Välimäki. If you're correlating 6 guys with no pitchers, he's probably at the top of that stack. But other than that, is he played over here ever?
I don't think so. Let's see. He won in Oman, and then he missed a few
wow.
cuts, but then he went 6th, 2nd, 10th through this swing. Like, he's playing as good as anyone besides basically Horsfield right now on the European Tour. No, I don't see anything for him in major championships. He was like Challenge Tour, whatever the PGT is. Then he was on like the Challenge in the Europe. Now he's just on the European Tour, and he's playing great.
I mean, what Rick said, I like Brian Harman, guys like that, they have experience against these players. They have experience in all sorts of situations. I know they're not playing the best, but I'll take the known over the unknown with most of these guys every time. Like, I think if you told me someone from this range is going to compete and get in the mix, I would say it's a Dahmen, Harman, like Sun Kang from the clouds somehow, rather than Romain Langasque.
Oh, he is from France, though. I mean, if you could tell me that Romain Langasque is smoking the long cigarette on the course, then I would be all in on that. But I might just have to take my guy Grayson Sig. That's a great name.
He's here.
All in on Grayson Sig at $6,100. Not actually going to use him, but just I'm rooting for him to play well. Someone like fresh Eddie Pepperell just isn't playing well whatsoever. What about Davis Riley, the king of the Corn Ferry Tour?
I hope you're asking Rick, because I have no inkling of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, Davis Riley was one of these guys that was catching a lot of steam. Maybe, I don't know. Time is a flat circle. I don't know when everybody was up on Davis Riley. Maybe last year. I do think I like the other guys better, right? I like the Brandon Woos. I like Will Z. I like those guys better. I don't think you can get me to Davis Riley. The results for me, they don't correlate as much. I don't think he's been as good as some of these other guys. But he was, a year ago, we were probably talking about him as the Brandon Wu, as the Will Z for something like this. And there's going to be a guy. There's going to be a guy who is like 2 under through 5 on Thursday morning, and everyone starts losing their mind on Twitter. Like, it might be Davis Riley.
Could be. Tom Lewis rates out really highly for me, as does EVR. Just down in this range, just kind of going through it. Streelman. And then we have the 2 guys. Rick, our guys, your guy, my guy. Do we just use them here? Do we use Lanto and Munoz and just call it a day?
Okay, so I gotta tell you, like this kind of started as like a joke, but like they're kind of good, right? Like Lanto gains strokes in all 4 categories, which usually gives you a pretty good floor. He showed that at the end of last season, and Munoz, who like it kills me every single week. Not only has he been racking up, top 20. I think he finished 8th at the Tour Championship. He finished 8th at the BMW, 18th the week prior to that. He also has these spurts, and we're not going to see it this week at Winged Foot, but he also has these spurts where, what was it, at the Northern Trust, he birdies like his first 7 holes, and you're like, oh my God, is this guy like, what is he doing right now? And it's always about consistency with him. Can he put it together for 4 rounds? But he has been in a stretch of golf right now. We're in it. Hopefully we're still in it. That is probably the best 4 or 5 week stretch in a while for him. I know he's popped off and he's won on the PGA Tour, but I don't think he's put together 3 or 4 weeks like we've seen recently, probably in his career.
By the stats in proximity, Ben, I mean, both those guys, Lanto and Munoz, are more results-based than anything else that they're even across the board. But if we're just looking at ball striking and fairways, I mentioned Tyler Duncan. He actually rates out really well, as does our guy, Matthias Schwab.
Oh, yeah, now we're getting somewhere. So Schwab, he's come over. He's done it in a WGC. He's got a little experience. I don't mind him. Andy Sullivan, as we're working down. Like, those are guys at least I've seen good enough to have an opinion on. Some of these other guys, I don't. Hey, Bezenhout is here. God, there's a lot of names in this field. I don't know how much I'm going to have to dip in the lower 6s, but if you do, it's honestly not that bad. I don't think these guys' missed cut equity is that much lower or higher, I should say, than the guys right above them.
Well, I guess that goes back to the first question that I kind of asked you. Are you now considering a potential Stars and Scrubs lineup, Ben?
Yes, I say this a lot on this show. When I say that, I don't mean just like I'm going to take 3 guys like north of 10K. A lot of times I call it hybrid balanced. It's like you take 3 guys in the upper 9s, and then you take 3 guys down here, and it looks kind of balanced, but it's actually pretty aggressive. It's not just complete top and complete bottom.
All right, so Rick, if we close off the $6,000 area, overall, what do you think is going to be your exposure down in this level? Are you going to try to avoid it as much as possible? And if not, like, who are your 2 or 3 guys that you think you're going to go with?
Yeah, I mean, it's once we started getting into it, as much as I love the idea of stars and scrubs, you have to find the scrubs, which is always a little scary. So if I go that route, it'll probably end up being the PGA Tour guys, right? Like the Joel Damons, it'll be like a Brian Harmon type of situation. The more we went through it, I feel as if I will probably be staying away from the 6K range as much as possible. I do like the idea of piling in some of the 9, the 8K guys, and then just dipping my toe into that area as opposed to really trying to rely on, especially some of the Corn Ferry guys, especially some of the Euro guys. I think that's a tough task.
So for me, I think what I'm going to do is basically make 2 separate sets of directives when I generate lineups this week. So basically, I do want to play a stars and scrubs type roster. I think that there's something to jamming in some combination of DJ, Rahm, and Justin Thomas, play 2 of those guys in a lineup, and basically just scattershot a lot of these guys that we talked about, the 6s, and hopefully I end up with the right lotto combo. Maybe I do that for 5 or 6 lineups, and then kind of twist it back around and do the Justin Thomas, Morikawa, Hideki, and Webb Simpson, like 2 of those guys to start kind of builds, so I can really attack that upper 7, lower 8, which I really do like. But I think you can kind of go myriad ways down here. Like Streelman, I think, is probably my favorite play, but I mean, you could talk me into Keegan. You could talk me into not Mackenzie Hughes for fucking sure. Fucking Mackenzie Hughes. Tom Lewis rates out really well. Like, Ben, Kevin Na. Has the time passed me for Kevin Na? Should I just jump off that bandwagon? Has he been so good to me that I don't owe him anymore?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I just don't think that he is one. I don't think he can survive off the tee. I just don't. Simple as that. But there are guys, you don't need to reach. It's a fine line between, I don't think you need to go down to Scott Hend. Like, that's a little much in the low 6s, but these upper guys, Benny On is there, EVR for me. I feel actually pretty comfortable with going those guys as my last couple guys in.
I guess if you were going to go down to the very bottom, would you take putting specialist, Rick? Handsome Australian guy too. Curtis Luck?
Oh God. Remember when he was like the #1 amateur in the world at one point. And I remember like rostering him being like, he's the next best thing. It was like right after Bryson. It was like Bryson was the #1 am, turned pro, and then Curtis Luck was the #1 am. No, I mean, I guess if you wanted a really cheap putting specialist, you could go with JT Poston. He's a guy who plays on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, and a guy who hits a bunch of fairways too. Like, he's not going to put himself in a bunch of trouble. He just kind of reeks.
Yeah, so I'm not excited. I'm not sprinting to the window to get either one of those guys, but I'd not Poston over Luck.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with what you guys were talking about. Like, almost go with the unsexy PGA Tour guy over the upshot Euro or anything like that. You might get more upside out of a Schwab or a Sami Valimaki or a Detry or a Peters, but Brian Harmon just might do the trick, right, Ben?
Listen, he can get it going. He's a grinder. I think Rick said it best, and I'm guilty of it like a lot of people. It's fun and it's sexy to say, like, I'm going to play this guy nobody's ever heard of. It's his first time available in these big tournaments. Yeah, but the prudent play is probably playing the guy that we've seen week in and week out grinding against similar competition, and not the same course, but similar courses, rather than a guy who's playing in Oman. Sorry to Oman, but I don't know if that's the same, to be honest.
Last 3 starts for Brian Harmon: 27th at the Wyndham, 11th at the Northern Trust, 12th at the BMW. He did a lot with putting at the BMW, but he was able to grind out a lot of pars, and that's just what you would expect, like, from him. Like, his around the green game is always so good. The approaches are hit and miss, but if he's going to be hitting fairways, like, he just reeks of like T27 in this field, doesn't he?
Yeah, that would be incredibly valuable too. Like, if that would be so useful. So if that's what you think, sign me up, and that is all you're going for. You don't need upside. Find the weekend and live to fight another day.
All right, guys. I think we've talked through it. So I have a much better feel for what I want to do now that we've mentioned every single player in the world and talked through it a little bit. I was highlighting names as we've gone along, so my cheat sheet's going to be up on dkplaybook.com later in the week. But I have 24 players highlighted right now. Probably going to play 20 lineups. I want to trim that down to like 17 or 18, I think, depending on the builds I want to do. But I think we're off to a good start here. I'll have my entire column up on DK Playbook as well. We'll have the betting show, the live chat, like I mentioned, 12 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, where I'll really finalize everything and hammer it down. Rick, what sort of content schedule do you anticipate having this week?
Yeah, so Rick Run Good YouTube channel, have the DFS preview. There'll be a betting preview. I've been kind of doing some shorter vids with like sleepers and fades. I'll do a live chat as well. So there's just going to be a ton of stuff going on at rickrungood.com, and then along with, you know, everything that goes out on Golf Digest and all the other places that you can find the work. I think CBS Sports, we're doing pods and live hits. I mean, basically multiple times a day, all day long. So if you want to see my face somewhere, there's plenty of places to see it.
Rick, awesomeo.com. I know you're doing every sport at the moment. What about golf specifically do you got coming?
Yeah, we're gonna have, you know, same type of thing. Betting previews will be out. Me and Tim Frank on Thursday. Me and Jason Roslin on Wednesday. Just breaking it all down. Projections, ownership, all those tools from Alex himself behind the paywall. So it's going to be a busy week in the golf world. It's going to be a busy week in the sports world for all of us, but I wouldn't want it any other way. We'd love to have you guys join the community.
All right. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at ThePME, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Smash a like to the button. Give me your favorite sleeper in the $6,000 range. Rate, review, and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. Listeners League link in the description of this video and podcast. And do not forget, hustle to become a member at fantasynational.com. Right now, fantasynational.com/Mayo. Get you 20% off, and you'll enjoy everything going on. I have my first look video where I go through with Fantasy National and show you how I do the research from that. I think you'll enjoy it. Justin Ray is always a good listen, too. So check out all of the ongoing golf, football, and MMA content on Mayo Media Network. Subscribe to that right now, all right? Thank you all for watching. Good luck this week. Someone go win $1 million. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!